All right. Today's BrainCandy episode is one where I was inspired by several other different things that came together. And I wanted to be able to kind of tell the story with more of a ChuckChat lens and kind of see how I explain how I see some of these different things and why them coming together really is something that we should be paying attention to at multiple different levels of leadership across many different companies and different types of things. So within this set of information, I'm going to be talking about some of the stuff from Amy Webb, South by Southwest. She has an annual presentation. Absolutely fantastic, well worth the time. Highly encourage everybody to check it out as part of her trend report, which is now renamed. And also then layering in other things from ARK, the ARK Big Ideas. They're an investment group, and their big ideas set of things, their acceleration map is, I think, fantastic and shows a number of these different things that reinforce the convergence with actual data and financial information. And then last, I put in a little bit of seasoning because jobs are always important. And when you think about some of the labor map visualization of where things are coming together and how that actually works. So I put a little bit of that information in here as well. And hopefully this helps to educate folks and gives an idea as to why some of this matters. So Amy's point on trend reports versus a convergence report is really, trend reports explain why what a change actually is and what's the vector, how are these things moving, and convergence is the idea really that you get multiple factors that go together and that change components sometimes in a accelerated manner, in a multiplying manner. And so in the old model, you follow one trend at a time, you react to that trend, it takes a certain amount of time. You can plan on an annual cycle, but in the new model, there's so many things happening at once, and a lot of times they collide and you get those multiplier effects. I also like to refer to this as a confluence, so I threw this one in there because it's a quarter word from when I growing up and be given a quarter when I used a big word. But so a confluence is where different things come together and you get a different effect. It's where you see like rivers flowing together, or you see different storm fronts coming together. And so I'll talk a little bit about some of those things as well. But we'll use the term convergence as we go through here throughout the rest of the deck. So in trends, you see those dots there on the side. It's really, how do they connect? Is it going right? Is it going left? Is it going up? Is it going down? You can see that very visually, but it's a single vector. It's a single direction of items. So it's like wind speed. The wind speed is 25 miles per hour into the north, which I think would be actually pretty high. And something to pay attention to. Or humidity, like it's whatever, it's 100% humidity because it's raining, or it's 0% humidity, there's no chance of rain. Those are good individual metrics that can give you an indicator of something that's going on. But when you see a system of things coming together, this is like a storm system where you have multiple different fronts. And when those fronts collide, you can see amplified effects. That's where you see big storms come through. That's where we get tornadoes here in Texas, or where you see major storm fronts, hurricanes, and you get multiple hurricanes, maybe even that collide with one another, making a bigger hurricane. And so those are the sorts of things that realistically they're harder to predict. It's harder to say this is exactly what's going to happen because it's not just a single line. It's a collection of items. It's a confluence of factors. It's a convergence of different factors. And so just like when you look at that simple example of the color overlapping on the top with the blue and yellow and the pink, you can see where they overlap. It's different than either of the underlying things, or the things that are overlapping one another. So just like a storm tracker, you really kind of got to think about that across the set of things that are going on. So think about it more like weather, and what should you be doing? Sometimes you should put on a helmet and hide. In this next bit is so our landscape right now, it really is a landscape. It's not just a single headline. There's not just one thing going on. There are many different things that are going on within the world of technology, within economics, within geopolitical events, social, demographic, climate, etc. There's just so many things that are all happening at once. And with them happening at once, we really need to be cognizant of how we should be responding and what we ought to be doing. So there's places where it's stable. There's relatively stable. You can continue to do some relatively expectations level planning. So business models are still holding. It's infrastructure may get a little bit of strain on it, but it's not breaking. It's not something that is screaming for movement. You get pressure zones where things are building up. And this is part of why I really like this landscape analogy here, because if you've got pressure building, you've got lava flows going underneath the ground, something is coming. You can tell, and that when things are starting to rumble a little bit, hey, there may be a volcanic eruption here. We should be potentially taking some action. So in those places where we see pressure zones, where we see things building up, we may see things restarting. We may see them reinforcing. We may see timelines compress. We may see something accelerating. You see, adapting to that gets harder. No one wants to stand on top of where a volcano is about to pop out. No one should want to stand where a storm is forming and you may have a tornado touchdown. And if you plan ahead, you can be well clear of those types of things, and you know what to be able to do. And then you got fault lines. There are places where there are big shocks. You know there's going to be big effects. You can see, where those things are, and you see value chains shift quickly. So there are different instances where along something like a fault line, you actually see that the ground changes. You know that it may be coming here, and this was once a flat, and now it's a mountain. You gotta be able to adapt with that. A lot of cases, things that make companies run are very subjective to something like that happen, and you have a difficulty in dealing with it because governance falls behind. You're not able to keep up with all the things that you need to be able to do. Your adaptability to something along those lines, easy for me to say, is not always what you want it to be. And so you have to do scenario planning. And this is part of what they refer to as you want to do those sorts of planning so that when something happens, you can actually respond. You don't plan for it to necessarily happen. You don't want a disaster to happen and one of your data centers to get wiped out. But if it does, you know what it is that you're going to do. You have a plan in place to be able to take that action. That's sort of how you view some of the fault line things. So I loved the reports that came out of ARK. They provide great data around innovation. They track that. That's their investment philosophy. They look at where things are being disrupted. They look at the innovation chains and how that's going to add up together. And they identified 5 major platforms. AI, no brainer there, right? Everybody's talking about that. But there's others. So it's robotics, it's energy storage, multiomics. I'll talk a little bit more about what that actually means. That's another quarter word, I think. And then public blockchain is another one that they talk about as well. Where when you look at these things and how they actually work together, this is where you see some of that confluence of factors, where you see the convergence of things coming together. And when they come together, you see multiplier effects. And they've got a number of different ways that they're talking about this, and that they explain it again with data, which I think is wonderful. So it's not just one trend, it's a trend among many trends. It's those things going together. You see an enabling layer. That enabling layer then enables something else to be able to go up on top of it, which enables something else to be able to go up on top of it, which makes the outside of that wheel turn ever so much faster. And so being able to do that, to see it and know from the data, these are the things that are happening. Here's what the dynamo is doing in the middle, and how fast it's going to be turning on the outside is something that can really be valuable when we're doing plans and we're trying to figure out what it is that we want to see. So some of the graphs and charts in the overall deck, and I'll have a link to their information here pinned in the comments, are well worth checking out. It gives a really good indicator of how things are stacking and which things are adding up versus just sitting there or being there individually together. So 3 major arcs throughout this whole episode of things that I'm going to be talking about. So 1, digital work. Digital work is going to be one of the first things that gets disrupted. It doesn't mean that it's going to go away, but things like writing, coding, analysis, coordination, etc., just general business of work and thinking work is getting disrupted. The things that are closer to digital are getting disrupted first. It doesn't, again, mean that they're going away, but it means that they're going to evolve. And so you got to be ready for that. Physical systems are actually next. And so you think about robotics, and whether you're talking self-driving cars or the robots that are going to help you around in your house, all of those types of things are coming. AI is helping to accelerate those. There's a number of other different factors that are at play as well that are helping to drive that at a much faster pace than historically we have seen. And so it's something that we should be thinking about. Maybe it's not right now, but it's soon, and it's something that we should expect some of that convergence and confluence of factors. And next, the last but certainly not least is living systems. So humanity, it's our own ecosystem. And so how do we work through care? What does that actually mean? What things are going to happen, whether it's gene focused treatments and medications, how that whole chain evolves, not necessarily just a hospital, but a hospital and then all the other things that go on around that. And it's direct to consumer care. It's other things that go with any one of those different streams. So next is the digital work itself is going to get exposed. And so when you consider that from the information, I thought this is a really good tool that Andre Karpathy pulled together. He showed, based upon data that was pulled together by the government, it's not like he didn't make it up. He ran through an LLM to be able to do some interpretation on it. But when you look at it, you actually still see jobs continuing to grow. You see more jobs coming in. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not disruption. So you look at some of those fully digital jobs, there's color coded red there over on the side. You see some higher AI exposure. So whether you're building software, and again, it doesn't mean that it's gone. It means it's potentially going to get reinvented. I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But then you see other things where there's mixed work, where sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's digital, sometimes it's communication. Things like teachers' jobs are really valuable. How do you make that real, right? One of the best quotes that I heard around this one is when talking to one of our friends, when talking to their students, they talked about AI and what the effect of AI was, and AI being a great teacher for a lot of knowledge. And one of the kids said, "Well, but what if I need a hug?" And things like that are real. It's not something that you're going to necessarily look to an AI to give that kid a hug. How do you actually continue to be able to support the full development of humans? And little humans are a great example, but it goes all the way through for skilled trades and everything else. How do you get what that impact is actually going to be, and when do you start to track some of these things? So hybrid services, I think we're seeing a lot of evolution here in terms of nurses and veterinarians and other things, being able to track some of that, provide more digital and home-based services as well as at the facility. And then we see other physical things like real world presence spaces where robots are actually doing more and taking more on and going to continue to be able to do that. And we're going to see things like that accelerate. Now, it is important to note exposure does not mean elimination, right? I love the quote from Jensen Huang. He recently at their NVIDIA conference, he said, if your first move with AI is cutting jobs, you have zero imagination. Leadership is not about shrinking, it's about doing more with your capabilities. With a lot of these things, we're going to see an unlock. And this is where I think Jevons paradox is a really relevant thing to bring up, because what he proposed, and originally this was way back in 1865, and it was around coal. It was basically around how technology, as it becomes cheaper, actually increases use. Now, he was partly making the point of, hey, we're kind of concerned with what it is that we're throwing up into the atmosphere. We continue to make it cheaper, and we're going to actually see an increase in use of this. It's going to get even wider as we go through and as we continue to improve it. So he was actually putting a thread of caution in there, but it also is, it really plays out for AI is if you can do more and your employees can do more, if you have the right imagination, there's whole new markets that you can go after. There's whole new things that you can do. And so orchestration between those, understanding what do you do? How do you measure that output? How do you measure that value? How do you make sure that you're capturing it from a company point of view? And then where does that actually go? So it doesn't mean that they're automatically going to disappear, but it does mean that you need to be thinking about it and planning for it. And then I really do think we're going to see an age here, and this is now. This is not coming, but this is now, is where jobs are going to change before they would any particular job would disappear. And so you'll see more individuals with particular sets of skills actually becoming more valuable, not less. And will it change the job landscape? For sure. Some firms are still going to cut headcount. It's going to happen. It's an easy way to be able to improve a bottom line. We've seen this from behaviors when I'm talking about public markets. That's going to continue to happen. But does that show a lack of imagination or a lack of market? Maybe. I think it's something where different companies are going to have to think that through. And the better they have a plan, the more things we do now, the better your outcome is going to be down the line. So I do think the labor equation is going to shift, and that whole set of puzzles and where it's going to be, I think you're going to see a squeeze there in the middle. But I think you're going to see routine work is going to compress. If I hate Emails. They're terrible things. I spend more time than I need to be able to on any one of those things. But that sort of digital work, no one, when filling out a better spreadsheet or filling out a better PowerPoint changes necessarily the world just with that particular action. If you can do that faster, if you can do that more efficiently, that's going to get better. And so coordination is going to have to get redesigned. I've talked about that in some of my other conversations, where how we can balance all of that agentic stuff and the number of things that we can fire off is going to be just as important. And how those tools actually get supervised and we get sign off is going to be important. And then across different markets, while yes, we're going to see some roles get more valuable, we see some roles go away. We're going to see firms actually change and fit, and some will overreact, some will overfire, and then we'll get it later. Some will underreact and perhaps get some competitive pressure from startups and others. This is a known business model, right? Look for somebody who's got a real fat margin and go after that with a cheap new way to be able to do it. That's going to happen all over the place with AI native operators and new companies starting up. Going to be key. And then from a leadership point of view, just across the board and regardless of what industry you're in, the understanding, hey, redesign your workflows before you figure out what it is that it's not a headcount target, it's a workflow target. If you can get more out of that particular workflow and then you enable some other different things. I think there was recently a article around a company that actually moved their folks, IKEA actually, to designers, and they increased the amount of things that AI could do, but then they trained the different employees on being designers, and it unlocked like a $10 billion increment of value for them. If you can do things like that and you think about that, you got to think outside the box. It's not your traditional business model set, but there's whole new things that you can do. But measuring it is important, right? This is the age, this is the year where measuring it, understanding what your cycle time is going to be, how do you actually track down to that value? But in order to do that, you have to know what your business processes actually are. You can't just say, we get this work done. We know we get this work done. All right, great. But how do you improve it? You got to measure it to be able to do that. And then understand that it's a sequence. It's not just a cliff where things are going to fall off. Now, this is a very busy slide. I apologize, but there's a lot of different data around this. I'm going to try and tell the story of this data. And if you want to read the details, ARK has got some fantastic stuff around this, and I would encourage you to go check it out. So when we talk about this productivity stack, for a long time it's been Office, and people are familiar with it. Whether you're familiar with general Microsoft Office, or whether you're looking about it from Google and Google's set of products, they're competitors in that same or similar space. And so when you look at productivity and worker productivity, this is, I think, a really compelling graph if you look down in that bottom left corner, where the time it took for Office to hit that level of value delivered, that level of income around productivity increase, is ridiculously long compared to OpenAI and Anthropic and the pace at which they've done it. Now, they are talking very different creatures, but this is a sign of different waves to come, right? If you think that was a slow wave that built and then it rolled for a long time, now we've got rapid waves that are moving up, and they're going to have a different impact. And so accelerating workers, like they're in ARK, they make a really good case for this around how it's a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, being able to go faster, to be able to get outcomes better, to be able to measure those things. And then you get that rapid adoption, you're going to see continued kick. But that's not all. So it's not just the work that happens in offices. There is already a race that's going on around building out these facilities. And so this is important, and it's important to track for a number of different reasons, because if you think about what is available and capable now with the current levels of inference, that cost continues to go down. So we go back to that Jevons paradox thing. Token demand is continuing to go up and up and up and up and up. There's more subscriber, there's more things that you can do, the whole agentic pieces, and now you're firing things off that run for hours, and soon it'll be days before you actually get different answers back. But as long as that inference count continues to go down, this is sort of akin to the hardware rules, Moore's law in hardware as it was going. It enabled things to stay flat from a cost point of view for a very long time. And I think you're seeing this, and it's an even faster curve. I don't know if anybody's coined the name for it yet, but we need to come up with one. What we'll call it the De Vries one if nobody else has claimed it. But being able to see some of that, and this is why all of the labs, all of the hardware manufacturers, NVIDIA, are all after inference because NVIDIA owns the training market. They have some of the best chips to be able to do it. All of the work that they did with CUDA really enables it. But inference, you can actually use a variety of different things to be able to do that and to serve it effectively and cheaply. And so I think you're going to see a mix of both giant data centers and large mega centers. You're going to see folks where we're doing more and more with smaller hardware as well, being able to utilize your phone to be able to run a model that will give some meaningful capability. This whole area is one that is going to have primary effects, secondary effects, and tertiary effects. And so if you plan for them, you start to think about it now, you can have something where you're able to better adapt to it as it continues to grow. So as we think about this as a wave that flows through, this is kind of my own merging of a number of these different pieces. So this is obviously my lens, but you got digital AI, you got agentic workflows that's feeding the power in data centers. You got robotics and sensors that are starting to scale because all those types of things are starting to go up. You see embodied autonomy where we're seeing robots able to do more. You're seeing the not just your agentic things that you're building out on your computer, but also its ability to reach out and do more within the ecosystem. And then you start to see real world labor, physical labor actually starting to shift. And so you see my little monster down there who's surfing across these different waves of things from the regular work products into data centers and into robotics. There's opportunities in every one of those things to see growth and continued capability. I'm excited about this slide. And the reason why I'm excited about this slide is this is some of the stuff where we're going to see real value and real value for humans. It's not just AI is cool and better, but we're going to see more things around autonomous care where we can not just take in some of that data, but understand what that data is, understand the data at scale, make actual recommendations for that specific person. And this is even before we start to get into the things like understanding DNA chains and cells and some of the work that's going on there. That starts to come next where we get into programmable biology. And I know that's something which sounded like science fiction for a long time, but now there are actual medications coming to market. There are things coming already they're coming out this year and that will be coming over the next several years in waves around better drugs, more personalized treatment. This is part of why I do think that you're going to see even an explosion of healthcare direct to consumer capabilities, and there's so many things that are going to be available that were never available or even imagined before. This is where multiomics come in. And so multiomics is really an idea. It's a big fancy word for basically just saying, hey, there's so many things that we can measure now, whether it's sensors or whether it's understanding the gene chain or whether it's understanding other aspects inside of all that stuff, your microbiome, your epigenetics, all the things that tie together, being able to take that whole confluence of factors, that whole convergence of things and say, okay, well, I know, hey, Chuck has celiac and he can't have these pieces, but we know we can also do this other thing. This occurs with this other gene on a regular basis. So you make diagnostics move so much faster and so much earlier. The ability to detect cancer before it actually starts to take root and be able to treat it before it actually becomes something that you have to have some of the more egregious treatments. That's a reality. There are things that are working in labs right now to be able to do things along those lines. And then this is the kind of from a human stakes point of view, right? Being able to do that, do it cheaper, do it at scale. The more you can do these things at scale, the higher the numbers there are, the more dollars will flow, the cheaper it will be able to be delivered. But still within all that stuff, explainability matters, right? I'm a dog on a bone on this particular one. You got to be able to, you can't just say, trust the AI. You got to be able to understand where did that data come from? What's the pieces that came together? How do we defend that as it's going through, that this is the right treatment, that this is the right thing for this particular individual? And then on the horizon, there's things like human augmentation. Like there's already been, and there a number of different things from like a physical augmentation of where you can get your shoes, you can get, and Amy talks about one where you basically are wearing a pair of digital pants, robotic pants that help you to be able to walk longer and further and be able to do more in a conference, and you get that much more percentage of capability out of it. I mean, all of those things are real, even like your brain and your augmentation and your memory augmentation. I'm a big fan of that one, being able to hold similar to those different things. And then senses, like all of these are things which are coming and coming quickly. And then living intelligence, this is just the ability to take in more, right? Whether just a simple thing of like you got your smart glasses and it's taking in things and bringing you information, and it's right there along with you, augmenting, or interpreting and saying, hey, this is such and such, and here's the other person. That's going to transform so many different things, both from a care point of view and how it will be able to be delivered. So this slide actually came from my earlier the loop deck that and please go check it out. Where I talked about all the different things that are speeding up from an AI point of view, and all of this in all of these factors, all of this confluence, all of these different capabilities coming together is part of what really drives all this stuff, from the initial intent, this is what we're trying to do, to the actions to be able to do it, the feedback as it goes through, you learn from that, you adapt, and then you continue that loop and you go faster and faster and faster. AI is really helping to be able to do this, but all of these things that I'm talking about, all of them have these feedback loops. And the more of these loops that you can tie in, again, that center wheel turning the outer wheels even faster is something that any company can take advantage of, any individual can take advantage of. But all that said, we also got to make sure that the risk is also something that we're taking care of. We need to be thinking about governance. It's really hard, right, to be able to keep up with these different things. I've talked about in another episode how can a government actually keep up with regulation and legislation when the capabilities of these models are changing every 3 months. It's not built to do that. It's built to change things over a multi-year period of time. And so we're going to have to come up with different systems to be able to do that, both from a company point of view, from a legislative point of view, from a government point of view, all the way up. We have to make sure from a trust point of view, it doesn't take much for something to go, you get a bad answer, you start to tune that out. You get a worse answer, or you get the same bad answer later on, you're like, that's it, I'm not trying anymore. We have to make sure that these things are credible and they continue to go through. And from a fragility point of view, making sure that we've got the right level of capabilities, the right backups. My earlier conversation around how you don't plan for a disaster, but you got to be ready for a disaster. And so understanding, hey, these things are now interdependent. If this piece goes down, what are the other consequences, and what could I do to isolate some of that? This is good technical design. These things start to become even more important. And power concentration is a real risk. If we don't want just one or two big companies that run all of these different things, this is part of why open source, I think, is a really important thing. But I think also we're going to have to come up with other ways to be able to make sure that power, that the dollars, that the other things all get distributed appropriately. So what should leaders do? It's not there's no easy button in any of this stuff, but it's also not anything that we've never seen change before. We know what they are. We just need to assemble some of the practices that we have historically done and be able to execute them with a faster pace and with a faster turn. So scan wider. Look, don't just take for granted these are my traditional competitors. These are traditional things that I have done, and this is what it's always going to be like. Look beyond your immediate industry. Look beyond your immediate competitors. Understand what other things may be coming in from the side. Find the pressure zones, the independent ones that are most likely to change based upon AI, based upon robotics, based upon genetics, any of these different things. As that whole confluence comes together, being able to understand what it is that's going to potentially impact you is really important, and that should feed your strategic planning. And don't just build your strategic plan once a year. Build it all the time. Revisit it on a regular basis, at least quarterly, probably more. Build in different scenarios and then test those scenarios. Have more than one scenario going. One of the things that I've actually been building some of my own set of toolkits on a coding point of view is where tokens are right now and the ability to code different things, firing off 3 things, doing it and seeing which one gives you the best results by measure, not by gut, allows you to be able to do so much more. There's things that you could do you could never do before. And that goes for scenario planning here as well. So this brain candy episode, that's my little monster eating little brain candies. It is not just AI that is the story. The real story happens as AI collides with all these other things. These other things are also moving. They've got their own set of wheels that are turning. Those wheels are all starting to turn faster and faster. And so I don't say that as the end is nigh or to cause anybody panic. We have mechanisms to be able to do this. We know, and we've been working on predicting weather. Do we do it perfectly? No, of course not. But I know, hey, if it's likely it's going to be raining, I take out an umbrella. So looking at some of these things from a business point of view and across the board is really important. And my last bit there is pro-human does not mean that we're only for humans. It means amplify first, and then understand that. Don't replace judgment. Understand what it is that we do and what we do well, and be able to take some of that stuff to the next level. So more things where you can go and read more, where you can see some of the different pieces. I've mentioned a number of different locations here. I will pin these in the comments. I'm looking for anybody to try and write all that stuff down. That you'll be able to get this from the pinned comments. Hopefully you found this BrainCandy to be interesting, exciting, and useful. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and hit the little bell. Get an alert whenever I post stuff. Thanks.